Imagine trying to map the surface of a donut. Not too hard, right? But now imagine that donut is like constantly shifting its shape.
Right, it's warping, it's stretching.
Yeah, exactly. And if you make one wrong calculation, the entire universe of possible shapes you were looking at just completely collapses into this infinite fractal chaos. Welcome to the deep dive.
It was a wild concept to start with, for sure.
It really is. So today our mission is to explore the life, the brilliant mind, and the enduring legacy of a woman who stared into that chaotic, shifting universe and, well, found perfect order. We are looking at the comprehensive Wikipedia biography of Maryam Mirzakhani.
And it is a truly remarkable document because, we aren't just looking at the math today. We're looking at the actual person who fundamentally changed how we understand the geometry of the universe.
Exactly. For those of you listening, our goal here is to understand not just the incredibly dense, abstract geometry she pioneered, but the extraordinary human story behind the very first woman and actually the first Iranian to ever win the Fields Medal.
Which is essentially the Nobel Prize of Mathematics.
Right. I am just so excited to translate some of these seriously abstract concepts into a story about, art and resilience and breaking boundaries. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, to truly understand how she reshaped the highest echelons of modern mathematics, we first have to look at the barriers she broke and the trials she survived as a young student.
You really can't separate her mathematical breakthroughs from her life story.
No, you simply cannot.
Then let's set the scene for the listener. She was born in Tehran, Iran in 1977. She ends up attending the Tehran Farzandigan School, which is part of their national organization for development of exceptional talents.
Right, a highly prestigious track.
And she doesn't just do well there. I mean, she completely rewrites the record books. So in 1994, she competes in the International Mathematical Olympiad in Hong Kong and becomes the first Iranian woman to win a gold medal.
Scoring a 41 out of 42.
Yeah, which is insane. And I have to ask, because I think we often hear Olympiad and just sort of think of a really hard spelling bee. What does a score like that actually mean in this context?
Oh, it's a great question because it's not like a standardized test where you just memorize formulas.
Right.
The International Mathematical Olympiad presents problems that require extreme creative leaps. You are basically given a blank page and a problem that might not look like anything you've ever seen before.
Wow.
Yeah, so scoring a 41 out of 42 means she wasn't just finding the answers. She was literally inventing the pathways to get there. And then, the very next year in Toronto.
She gets a perfect score.
Exactly.
In 1995, she becomes the first Iranian ever to achieve a perfect score, taking home 2 gold medals. To put this into perspective for you listening, it's like watching a young athlete completely shatter Olympic track records before they even turn professional.
That's a really good way to frame it.
Yeah, and she and her friend, Roya Beheshti Zafara, were the first women to compete in the Iranian National Mathematical Olympiad. They even wrote a book together on elementary number theory before the decade was out.
Just incredible output at such a young age.
But then, that trajectory takes a terrifying turn in 1998.
Yes, March 17, 1998.
Mirzakhani and Zafara are on a bus in Avaz, heading back to Tehran after a conference for gifted individuals and former Olympiad competitors. And tragedy strikes. The bus literally falls off a cliff.
It was awful.
It becomes this massive national tragedy in Iran. 7 passengers, all brilliant Sharif University students, were killed. Mirzakhani and Zafara were among the very few survivors.
It was a profound loss that completely shocked the nation and the whole academic community. I mean, you have a generation of elite mathematical minds, and several of them are just gone in an instant.
It really makes you pause. She survives this horrific crash, goes on to get her Bachelor of Science from Sharif University of Technology, where she actually develops a simpler proof for a theorem of Schur, and then she heads to the U.S.
Right, to do graduate work at Harvard under Curtis McMullen, who is a Fields medalist himself.
Yeah. And at Harvard, her biography notes, he was known for her determination and relentless questioning. Which brings me to a probing question for you. How does surviving a tragedy like that 1998 bus crash reframe her famously relentless determination later in those halls of Harvard?
What's fascinating here is how surviving that kind of trauma seems to have forged an incredibly unique, just unshakable resilience in her.
Like a totally different perspective on fear.
Exactly. When you face mortality that closely, especially alongside your peers, it fundamentally shifts your perspective on what is actually scary. At Harvard, she wasn't intimidated by the prestige of the institution or, the difficulty of the language barrier.
Right.
She brought a completely unique, multilingual, and persistent perspective to Western academia. The source text mentions she would literally sit in these high-level Harvard math classes and take all her notes in her native Persian.
That is such a vivid detail, taking notes in Persian during a complex English math lecture.
Because she wasn't just trying to assimilate into a Western mold of thinking. She was actively translating the world's most complex problems into her own internal language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she wasn't afraid to ask relentless questions because the fear of looking foolish in a classroom simply didn't register. She was there to understand the core truth of the mathematics, whatever it took.
And that refusal to be intimidated by a language barrier or a prestigious classroom is the exact same mindset she applied to a mathematical landscape that had, honestly, intimidated scholars for a century.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the actual spaces she was trying to measure. Because my understanding is that she was working with Riemann surfaces and moduli spaces. And my brain is already melting a little bit just saying those words.
It is incredibly dense material, I won't lie. But her approach to it was surprisingly human and visual. So to start, a Riemann surface is essentially a 2D surface that has complex numbers built into it.
Okay.
Think of a sphere, or a donut with one hole, or a donut with 2 holes, 3 holes, and so on.
Okay, I can visualize a multi-hole donut.
Good. Now, she was looking at geodesics on those surfaces.
Let's define that for the listener really quick. A geodesic is basically the natural generalization of a straight line, but drawn on a curved space. Like if you were an ant walking perfectly straight on the surface of an apple, your path is a geodesic.
Exactly. Or imagine pulling a rubber band tight across the surface of a donut.
Right.
The path that rubber band takes, where it's as short and tight as possible, is a geodesic. A closed geodesic means the line loops back around and connects with itself perfectly.
But the specific problem she was looking at for her 2004 PhD thesis was counting simple, closed geodesics, meaning the loop doesn't cross over itself.
Right, no intersections.
No figure eights. Just simple, non-intersecting loops. And why was that so hard to count?
Because historically, this was an incredibly stubborn problem. A previous result established that if you look at all closed geodesics, their number grows exponentially as the length of the lines gets longer.
I'm not sure I see the connection yet. Clarify that for me. Why is exponential growth a problem?
Because exponential growth just explodes into chaos. It means the longer the line gets, the number of possible ways it can loop around the surface multiplies so fast that it becomes impossible to count or predict.
Okay.
It's basically a mathematical jungle. But Mirzakhani cracked the problem by focusing only on the simple ones, the ones that don't cross themselves.
And what did she find?
She proved that the number of simple closed geodesics doesn't grow exponentially. It grows polynomially.
Which is much more manageable.
Exactly. Without getting bogged down in the algebra, she essentially proved that within this chaotic, infinite explosion of lines, there is a strict, predictable structure. But only if you look at the lines that don't cross themselves. She found a specific formula tying the length of the loops to the geometry of the surface itself.
Okay, so she tames the chaos. But she wasn't just looking at one surface, right? The text mentions moduli space. Stop right there. What is a moduli space?
So, to use a brilliant analogy from the text provided by mathematician Jordan Ellenberg, imagine a billiard table. You can study how the balls bounce around on that one table, but Mirzakhani's work was incredibly meta. She wasn't studying the balls on one table, she was studying the universe of all possible billiard tables.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A moduli space is a space where every single point within it represents a completely different shape or structure.
So as you move through moduli space, the billiard table itself is morphing and changing its shape in a rule-governed way. The table is moving like a strange planet around the universe of all possible tables.
Exactly. And she solved monumental problems within that moving universe, like William Thurston's conjecture about the earthquake flow on Teichmüller space.
Okay, earthquake flow sounds like a geology term, not math.
It does, but it's deeply physical math. Imagine taking that donut we talked about and cutting it along one of those simple closed loops.
Okay.
Now, slide the two edges past each other, literally like tectonic plates sliding in an earthquake, and then glue the donut back together. You've just changed the fundamental geometry of the surface.
You've created a totally new shape, a new point in moduli space.
Exactly. And she proved that this earthquake flow is ergodic.
Hold on, ergodic, another intense word. What does that mean in the context of our shifting donut?
Ergodic essentially means that if you keep doing this, cutting, twisting, and gluing over an infinite amount of time, that shape will eventually visit every single possible state within its universe.
Oh, I see.
It won't get stuck in a rut. It will explore the entire moduli space evenly. Proving that requires manipulating shifting infinite shapes in your mind that, honestly, most modern supercomputers would struggle to even render.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. I want to push back on her own self-assessment from the text.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, we are sitting here talking about her cracking these massive open problems. The text notes her work unlocked the geometry of whole surfaces, leading to new proofs for formulas by mathematical giants like Edward Witten and Maxim Kontsevich.
Right, legendary figures.
But then the biography notes that she called herself a slow mathematician. She said, "You have to spend some energy and effort to see the beauty of math." She would literally lay out huge sheets of paper on the floor and just draw doodles all over them, writing mathematical formulas around the edges.
Yeah, her young daughter used to describe her mother's work as painting.
Wait, she's visualizing universes of shifting shapes and taming chaotic formulas, but she called herself slow.
It sounds like a contradiction, but it's actually the key to her genius.
Right.
Speed in mathematics is often equated with calculating quickly or jumping to the end of a known proof.
Like a race.
Right. But she wasn't doing that. She was doing foundational architectural work. She wasn't looking for the quickest shortcut. She was refusing to rush the painting of her math until she saw the complete picture.
And that patient methodology is why her later discoveries were so revolutionary, like the magic wand theorem in 2014.
Yes. Working with Alex Eskin and Amir Mohammadi, she proved what mathematicians lovingly call the magic wand theorem.
What were they looking at?
They were looking at these complex paths in moduli space. Before this, mathematicians assumed that if you plotted these paths, they would look irregular, fractal.
Like zooming into a Mandelbrot set, where the complexity just gets messier and more chaotic the deeper you go.
Exactly, but they weren't chaotic.
No.
No. They found that these spaces were incredibly regular. They were rigid, algebraic objects defined by clean polynomials. The International Mathematical Union literally released a statement saying it was astounding to find this kind of rigidity in the inhomogeneous world of moduli space.
Wow.
Imagine walking into a dense, overgrown forest, waving a magic wand, and suddenly all the trees snap into perfectly straight, symmetrical rows. She found an elegant, rigid order hiding inside what everyone else assumed was fractal chaos.
And that incredibly creative, highly visual approach to problem solving led her to the absolute pinnacle of her field. But tragically, that pinnacle occurred almost simultaneously with her greatest personal battle.
Yes. The timeline in the biography is just devastating. In 2013, she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
And then, the very next year, on August 13th, 2014, in Seoul, she is awarded the Fields Medal, the highest honor in mathematics. The text explicitly notes she was the first woman to win the prize and the first Iranian.
It's a monumental achievement.
She's standing up there, a brilliant Stanford professor, having solved these monumental, century-old problems, recognized globally by her peers. But behind the scenes, she is fighting a terrible, aggressive disease.
Yeah. The cancer eventually spread to her bones and her liver. She passed away on July 14, 2017, at Stanford Hospital in California. She was only 40 years old.
40 years old. It's hard to even process the loss of that much potential. But there's a quote of hers in the text that I think captures her spirit during this time perfectly.
What'd you quote?
When asked about her philosophy on solving mathematical proofs, she said, "It is like being lost in a jungle and trying to use all the knowledge that you can gather to come up with some new tricks. And with some luck, you might find a way out."
That is just so poignant.
So what does this all mean? When you look at that juxtaposition diagnosed in 2013, reaching the ultimate academic glory in 2014, and passing away in 2017, that, quote, takes on an incredibly heavy, beautiful meaning.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that lost in a jungle, quote, is profound because it completely transcends mathematics. It encapsulates the bravery required not just in elite theoretical geometry, but in facing the profound uncertainties of life and mortality.
Absolutely.
When you are given a terminal diagnosis, you are suddenly dropped into a dark jungle. There's no map, there's no straightforward formula to make it make sense.
Right.
But she approached the terrifying unknowns of her health with the exact same philosophy she applied to the uncharted territories of moduli space. You gather your knowledge, you pull out your blank canvas, you look for new tricks, and you keep moving forward, hoping to find a way out. Her resilience wasn't just academic, it was existential.
And while her mathematics completely reshaped our understanding of abstract geometry, her death inadvertently reshaped cultural norms, legal debates, and the global scientific community. The ripple effects of her passing were staggering, particularly in her home country of Iran.
They were historically significant, without a doubt.
Right. And just as a note for you listening, we're looking strictly through the lens of the historical events as outlined in her biography here. We're not taking sides, but the facts alone are stunning. When she passed away, several Iranian newspapers, as well as then-President Hassan Rouhani, broke a strict taboo by publishing photographs of Mirzakhani with her hair uncovered.
Which was a massive deal.
Yeah, the text notes that typically newspapers would use digital manipulation, dark backgrounds, or even paintings to hide a woman's hair in print. But in her honor, to recognize her immense global stature, they broke that rule. President Rouhani even issued a statement praising her as a creative scientist and a turning point in showing the will of Iranian women.
And the cultural shift didn't stop at the media. Her death actually became a tangible legal catalyst.
Yes, because she was married to a Czech scientist, Jan von Drack, and they had a young daughter together. Under Iranian law at the time, children of Iranian mothers and foreign fathers faced difficulties visiting Iran.
Right, there were strict nationality laws.
Following her death, 60 Iranian members of parliament urged the speeding up of an amendment to a law that would allow matrilineal citizenship. The specific goal was to make it easier for Mirzakhani's daughter to visit Iran. I mean, it is just staggering to think that a theoretical mathematician's life and death could literally spark debates on national citizenship laws on the floors of parliament.
This raises an important question about the true scope of a scientific legacy. We often categorize people into singular boxes. She's a brilliant geometer, or she's a trailblazer for women, or she's an Iranian cultural icon.
But she was all of those.
Exactly. Mirzakhani synthesized all of these impacts simultaneously. On a global scale, she broke the ultimate glass ceiling in a heavily male-dominated STEM field, proving that the highest levels of abstract architectural thought belong to women just as much as men. And concurrently, in her home country, her sheer, undeniable brilliance forced a cultural and legal reevaluation.
And her impact is literally etched into our world and beyond now. The global honors poured in after her passing. The International Council for Science declared her birthday, May 12th, as International Women in Mathematics Day.
A beautiful tribute.
The Breakthrough Prize Foundation created the Maryam Mirzakhani New Frontiers Prize to award $50,000 to early career female mathematicians. Oxford launched scholarships in her name. The Farzanegin High School she attended in Tehran named their library after her. And in 2024, the International Astronomical Union named a lunar crater in her honor. A literal crater on the moon bears her name.
It's a fitting tribute for someone who mapped the universe of possible shapes.
It really is. To recap the journey we've been on today, we've traced the path of a young, resilient survivor in Tehran, pulling herself from the wreckage of a tragic bus crash. We followed her to a quiet office at Stanford, where she sat on her floor, mapping the universe of changing billiard tables.
Yeah.
And we saw her become a cultural icon, whose name now looks down on us from the moon. And the biggest takeaway for me is that true genius isn't always about speed. It isn't about having the fastest calculation or the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it's about having the patience to sit on the floor, embrace the unknown, and literally paint the math until the hidden structures of reality finally reveal themselves.
That's a powerful realization. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering thought to mull over based on her incredible story. Think about a complex, seemingly impossible problem you're facing in your own life right now. Maybe it feels chaotic, like an exponential fractal you just can't decipher. What if, instead of frantically searching for the fastest way out, you adopted Mirzakhani's mindset? What happens if you accept that you are lost in the jungle, pull out a metaphorical blank sheet of paper, and simply start doodling the universe around you?
Because sometimes the only way to find that clean, precise straight line you're looking for is to first understand the beautiful, shifting curve of the space it lives in.